9:32, 28 minutes in front of the hour of 10 o'clock. Welcome back into the Gary Harris Show, the Tuesday morning edition. This hour being brought to you by the Alabama Credit Union. Member-owned, not-for-profit. Visit alabamacu.com to learn more. See if you're eligible for membership. Then join today and feel good about your money. Let's welcome Drew DeArmond into the program. The Rocket Man out of 97.7 ESPN Radio in Huntsville, the co-host of Talkin Ball, weekday mornings 7 until 9 a.m. Drew, good morning. Did you have a good holiday season?
Yes, I did, Gary. Happy New Year to you. It's great to be back on with you. Great. It's a little bit of a sad day yesterday in Tuscaloosa, seeing one of the greats move on, but we certainly wish him all the luck in the world, and we all are going to be rooting for Tua Tagovailoa going forward. But great to be back on Tide 100.9 this morning.
Drew, good to have you. And obviously we're going to start with Tua. For a while there, we were getting strong indications that he was going to return for a senior season, and then I guess probably Sunday is when we, in the media, people that have, talk a little bit, started, hearing that he probably was going to go. And then by yesterday morning, I think the cat was pretty much out of the bag that he was going to declare for the NFL draft, and, the connection with Lee Steinberg had already been made and so forth and so on. What do you think was the tipping point? Why do you think the decision from Tua and his family to enter the NFL draft rather than come back to Alabama?
Well, I think everything changed when they went to New York. So from Thursday into Friday, I know he told the coaching staff that he was coming back. Everything was very positive. They took one more trip to New York to get a checkup on his hip, and as Nick Saban talked about, giving them all the information that they needed. And I think after they got that report, I do think that things started changing with his father, Nalu Tagovailoa, and I think probably the Steinberg, his agent, some other feedback they were getting from NFL people made them change their mind. I think they felt like they had a guarantee that someone was going to take him at a certain point in the draft, which satisfied Nalu, and I think he decided to make that decision for Tua to turn pro. I don't think it was Tua's decision. Ultimately, I do think Tua, as late as Sunday, wanted to come back to the University of Alabama, wanted to finish with his brothers, he only needs 17 credit hours to graduate. He would have been able to graduate. And I think for him, in his heart, he wanted to finish healthy. He wanted to finish his career the way he wanted to. It's kind of taken away because of a freak accident. And so I think I was sad for that. I could tell by the body language of Nick Saban and the tone, and then you could see from Tua and his mannerisms. It should have been a joyous time because he's going to become a wealthy young man, going to have a chance, even regardless of the situation, I think, to have an outstanding NFL career. Hopefully he's going to go to a good situation, but I think he really wanted to finish at Alabama, and I think it would have really cemented his status as a legend for the Crimson Tide. So in a way, I think it's a little bit incomplete, though you cannot measure his impact. He had such a tremendous impact on Alabama football. He basically redefined the quarterback position, and certainly without Tua Tagovailoa and his greatness, there would be no Bryce Young in Tuscaloosa right now.
Let's look ahead, Drew, and because clearly, we don't know, no one knows at this point exactly what his physical status is going to be. He even said that yesterday. He feels like he's going to play next season, but at this point, no one knows for sure. So it's not a risk, like you said, in the sense that his talent is so great that he is going to get drafted. The question is by who and where in the first round. I saw a lot of people say yesterday that they just don't think with the medical questions that you could take him in the top 10. I disagree. I look at it like this, and I'm curious what you think. I think there are some teams, probably, based on what a little bit I know about the way the NFL works, that if they have a quarterback, he may not even be on their board because of the medicals. They may just say, hey, listen, he's not an option for us. But there's no way with that kind of talent and charisma, because you got to think about what he brings off the field as well in terms of being the face of your franchise, that somebody's going to grab him, Drew's my thinking. I think the Dolphins could take him at 5. I think the Lions could take him possibly at 3. I don't think he gets out of the top 10. I just think if he starts to slide, there's going to be somebody that says, listen, man, we cannot, let this guy pass through here without us grabbing him. That's the way I feel about it. I think he winds up going in the top 10. A lot of people don't. A lot of people think he may be the middle or the lower half of the first round. How do you see it?
Well, just based upon what I was hearing and the feedback that Nick Saban got, I think he'll slide out of the top 10.
Do you?
Does it mean he's going to slide out of the top 15? Not necessarily. Wouldn't surprise me if he was drafted between 11 and 20. That's probably where he'll go. I certainly don't think it'll be what would be considered the latter third of the first round. I still think he's too talented not to go in the top 20 because there's such a premium put on quarterback play. Now, could somebody like the Miami Dolphins, I think the Dolphins have the 5th pick, the 18th pick, the 27th pick, could they still take him with the 5th pick? Absolutely. And for his sake, I hope that happens. I mean, certainly the Dolphins aren't the greatest organization right now. They have, their ownership situation is okay, but they haven't been able to really gain traction and become a perennial playoff organization. But Tua could change that. And really, I want him to go as high as possible for he and his family because I think he's put a lot of work in, and I think he deserves success. He handled himself in an exemplary fashion on and off the field. So. But I just have a feeling due to the uncertainty, because to me, when you're being drafted 5th, Gary, they want you to play early. Mm-hmm. And there's no guarantees that Tua is going to be able to do that. I do think that he'll be ready for the football season. But if you're the Dolphins, you've got Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is a grizzled veteran, been with a bunch of different teams. I think for Tua's sake, coming back from this injury, I think if he had returned to Alabama, he could have proven all the naysayers wrong and proven he was healthy and proven he was back. But now that he's going on to the NFL, I don't think he should be rushed. I think it should be a situation probably where if he was on the Dolphins, you sit behind a Fitzpatrick, maybe not for the whole season, but for at least maybe the first month or two of the year. If the season's not going well for your team and Tua is healthy, then you give him a shot to play and start to prove himself and start trying to turn this organization around. But I think for his sake, probably the best case scenario is to make sure you are absolutely 100% healthy, and then and so wherever he goes in the NFL, I think it'd be better for him to not maybe start the first game as a rookie, but to be brought on a little bit slower, maybe kind of like a Daniel Jones of the New York Giants this year. So to me, I think he'll probably fall out of that top 10. But I wouldn't be surprised if he went 11 through 20. And that's still a lot of money, but to me, it's money you also lost. I go back to what Tua said to Cecil Hurt and Kirk Herbstreit when he made his first public comments, and he said, well, people say that I can make up the money I could lose if I slip in the draft in my second contract. Well, actually, I can't. It's gone. And to me, if Tua had not suffered the injury, the hit to the hip, he's a top 3 pick, and nobody has a problem with him going because it would have been him, Joe Burrow, and Chase Young. And right now, due to that uncertainty, I don't think he's going to go that high in the draft. I think he'll slide a little bit. But certainly it opens up the possibility that he could go to a better organization.
It does. And when I made my comments about him going to the top 10, I'm making that based on the fact that nothing comes up adverse with the medicals. Because if something were to come up that he was not going to be able to play this year, then clearly that would change everything. But I just still feel like whether it's the Dolphins at 5 or the Chargers at 6, it's just going to be hard to pass on that kind of talent, but we shall see. All right, let's talk about Taulia, because, family is family regardless, but in Polynesian culture, family is everything. And this was a family decision. Tua's father has a big say-so in everything that happens with the family. They uprooted from Hawaii. They moved to Alabama. Taulia enrolled at Thompson High School in Alabaster. And there is some chatter that Tua gets drafted wherever he gets drafted, that Taulia might transfer to a school closer to Tua's NFL city. What do you make of that, Drew? You think there's anything to it?
Well, I mean, I said this on our station at ESPN 97.7 The Zone yesterday. I don't expect Taulia to be at Alabama after the spring, but the simple fact is I don't think he'll be the starting quarterback. You've got Mac Jones, who is the incumbent right now, who really played well for the most part down the stretch, proved himself, showcased his talent. So he's going into the spring practice, as QB1, as he should. He earned that opportunity. Then you've got a guy like Bryce Young, who's being brought in, probably the number 1 quarterback in the country, Gary, maybe the number 1 overall prospect when it's all said and done, because quarterbacks are so valued. Now, we have not seen him take one snap in practice. We've been able to watch him on film, watch him at the All-American game, MVP performance, 9 out of 12. 164 yards, 2 touchdowns this past Saturday. But we have not seen him with our own eyes in a practice or scrimmage at Alabama. So I want to reserve judgment for that. He seems very impressive, very advanced mentally. If he is as good as his ballyhoo, and in other words, is someone that's going to compete with Mac Jones right away as an early enrollee to be Alabama's starting quarterback, then I think unless Taulia, makes some strides, and I know he was making physical strides this year. I know mentally he's coming along, but if he's not able to go head to head, and I've always said that the Bryce Young-Taulia matchup would be a fascinating one, but if Taulia finishes behind Bryce Young and cannot overtake Mac Jones, because Mac is going to be QB1 probably coming out of spring, it's going to take a lot to beat him out going into the fall. It'll probably take till that time. But if Taulia is not making a big push with Mac Jones and Bryce Young after the spring, I don't expect him to be here. He's, of course, already burned his, not burned his red shirt, but he ended up not redshirting this year, so he has a red shirt that he can use. And I do think there would be a very strong chance if he's not in the mix to be the starting quarterback after spring that he could move on.
Drew DeArmond with us from 97.7 ESPN Radio in Huntsville. And when we get to the next segment, I want to ask you about some of these other guys that are going, and Pat called in earlier with a recruiting question for you. But before we get to the break, I talked about this with Rodney Orr yesterday, and I'll say this even if Tua had come back. Offense has not been the issue probably the last couple of years in terms of this team. And regardless of who the quarterback is, defensively, Drew, there are some issues. It doesn't mean they're terrible. I'm not saying that they're terrible, but the 2 games that were lost this year, Alabama scored enough points to win those games, or should have scored enough points to win those games against LSU and against Auburn. And I thought the second half in the Citrus Bowl against Michigan was a lot better, but it just, Alabama's kind of lost their mojo a little bit defensively. I mean, you used to see Alabama run out there defensively, and you're expecting a 3 and out, or at worst, a couple first downs and the other team's punting. Now you're just hoping, can they hold them to a field goal? Let's be honest. I mean, teams in the first half in the bowl game we saw, Michigan gashed Alabama. Alabama was fortunate to have kept them to 16 points. What do you see with the defense? I mean, sure, and nobody plays defense the way they did 10 or 15 years ago. The game's changed so much, but clearly this defense has got to be addressed, right? And there's got to be something done for Alabama to improve on that side of the football. Where do you see this going defensively?
Oh, they have to make changes without a doubt, Gary. I mean, I think the standard has slipped the last 2 years. Have not been up to what Nick Saban is used to at Alabama defensively. This year, I think there was even more slippage than there was in 2018. Of course, injuries had a lot to do with that. Once again, they were decimated by injuries. They didn't have the depth, per se, that they had available in 2017, so they weren't able to withstand it. But I just think also there's been communication issues on all 3 levels of this defense for the last 2 years. So to me, that's coaching. I don't think guys necessarily got better as the season went on. There seemed to be guys plateauing, guys that, not taking it to the next level. And I think 2 to 3 changes need to be made on the defensive side of the football. No question about it. I think Nick Saban needs to get some guys in here that he trusts, that he knows can run his system. Because let's understand, much like Nalu Tagovailoa, he makes the decisions for the Tagovailoa family. Nick Saban is ultimately the decision maker for Alabama football. It's his systems on offense, defense, and special teams, and he's been very fortunate and blessed to have Will Muschamp to develop into a great coordinator for him at LSU, and with the Dolphins, and then Kirby Smart, with Alabama, and then Jeremy Pruitt. And I think Pete Golding was thought to be the next in line there. To me, it hasn't worked out. Pete probably needs to go and get a fresh start elsewhere, but Alabama needs to make changes on all 3 levels in coaching on that defense. They've got to get more out of the D-line. They've got a lot of young defensive linemen that need to be developed. So, to me, you've got to have a guy that can come in there that can coach and recruit, a Bo Davis type on that defensive line. I think you need to make a change at defensive coordinator, get someone in there that's more seasoned that Nick Saban trusts. And then the secondary-wise, to me, I think Carl Scott's done an outstanding job recruiting. But if you watch the cornerbacks, I didn't think they got better this year. So I think Nick Saban's got some big-time decisions to make and some adjustments that need to happen defensively.
All right, Drew, hold on. We're going to get to our break here. We're going to come back with one more segment. We'll ask Drew about this football team going forward, other juniors that are leaving, the ones that are coming back, and we'll do that when we come back on the other side of this break here on the Gary Harris Show on Tide 100.9 FM. The crew brings us back in, Motley Crew here on the Gary Harris Show, I guess. And I'm not referring to Drew and myself, by the way. One more segment with Drew DeArmond here from ESPN Radio 97.7 in Huntsville. Drew, the now dubious tweet that Alabama football put out a week or so ago with the dominoes falling didn't quite turn out the way that a lot of people thought and hoped it would in regards to the juniors. There was a groundswell of enthusiasm that most of these guys would come back. It didn't happen, but some have come back. Let's run it down. Obviously we knew Lewis was leaving. Judy's leaving. Wills is leaving. Tua's leaving. Ruggs is leaving. Xavier McKinney's leaving, and then clearly it looks as though Najee Harris is going to leave. Leatherwood did stay. Moses is coming back. Landon Dickerson, I think we all felt like all along he would come back. Devontae Smith is a big one. You look at his numbers, wide receiver-wise, they're certainly good enough to go on to the NFL. So just when it's all said and done, the way this is shook out, some good players came back, not as many maybe as we had hoped for, but roster-wise, with these guys coming back, with the freshman class coming in, with the guys that are that weren't eligible to leave early, just your thoughts on early kind of synopsis of this 2020 Alabama football team.
Well, I mean, as you said, all the five dominoes that we thought would fall that didn't come to pass. They got three of them. They got Devontae Smith, who will be as good as any receiver in college football, I think, next year. They've got a great left tackle in Alex Leatherwood, who should be going through his second year, full year starting there. And then to get Dylan Moses back, and let's not, and really a fourth one, because Joshua McMillan announced he was going to use his sixth year. So you've got both of those starting linebackers potentially back. Now, will Josh start? I'm not so sure about that, but invaluable role player, a guy that's very, very intelligent, like another coach or graduate assistant that can bring along young backers. He helped Dylan Moses a lot when he was young. So I think Joshua McMillan, if he starts or not, could be very, very valuable. So you got all those pieces back. Now, the only unknown is Najee Harris. He still has not announced. My gut would still tell me he was going to move on, Gary, but I know there's been some talk that he didn't like the grade he got, which is middle-round grade, third or fourth round. He thinks he could improve on that. Be a very crowded running back room. As you know, Brian Robinson would be back as a senior. You signed three running backs in the early signing period, Jace McClellan, Kyle Edwards, who is an outstanding prospect, and Roydell Williams. And then you still have guys like Keelan Robinson and then Trey Sanders coming off an injury. So going to be an interesting decision for Najee Harris, who had a great year for Alabama, led the SEC in touchdowns. You lose Henry Ruggs, and the sad part is, last Thursday into Friday, it still seemed very positive that they were going to get Tua back and Ruggs. You were going to get those five back, which I think would have had Alabama being – I still think they're going to be one of the best offenses in college football, but they might have been the best with all that talent coming back. But Ruggs, he's a guy that – got a second-round grade, but he could move up into the first round. He's very explosive. He's going to run an outstanding 40, going to test off the charts. So for him, you hope that he can get into that first round. Xavier McKinney got a first-round grade, so you can't blame him for moving on. Jedrick Wills, I think, is another one that's going to move. He's already rapidly moving up the charts. I think it's going to continue. So most all the decisions I thought were really good ones. I thought, Tua, he's still going to be a first-round draft choice, so you pray that it's just a high one. But, again, just disappointing because I think Tua and Ruggs could have benefited from another year. But overall, Alabama's still got a lot of good pieces back. When you have a Jalen Waddle coming back as a junior, you've got a Devontae Smith. Even if you don't have Najee Harris, you still got a very deep, talented running back room. And I really like some of the young receivers, like a John Mechie, a Slade Bolden, Xavier Williams. He gives them all a chance to showcase their talents, not to mention a freshman like Tyu Jones-Bell. So Alabama's got some talent back. They've got Miller Forrestall, Jaleel Billingsley. So still a lot to look forward to. And Mac Jones, I thought, really, once he got a chance, and every time he was allowed to start and prepare as a starter, played very well. I'm going to be interested to see that battle between him and Bryce Young. So overall, offensively, Alabama should still be really good. It's just on special teams? Can Will Riker get healthy? And then the biggest question, who's on that defensive coaching staff, and can they start developing a lot of this young talent? Because, I know you said Pat called in with a recruiting question. I don't think there's any doubt that the defensively on all three levels, D-line, linebacker, and secondary, I think Alabama is starting to reload on defense. Now they just need the coaching staff to develop it.
Going to be an interesting spring, a very anticipated spring. There's no doubt about that. As you alluded to, Pat did call in with a recruiting question for you. And listen, Alabama's got a great class already. I don't think there's any doubt they're going to sign 3 or 4 more guys. And one guy that they're after, and this is who Pat asked about, McKinley Jackson, the big defensive tackle out of Lucedale, Mississippi, a target of a number of teams, and just recently got added an offer from Oregon. This is one of those old-fashioned run stoppers. Drew, he's not that tall, about 6'1", but boy, he is hard to move. He had a dominant performance in the Alabama-Mississippi High School All-Star game. I know a lot of people are pitching him, including Alabama. You have any feel on what McKinley Jackson will do in February?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a tough battle. LSU still in there, Texas A&M, Alabama, Auburn, perhaps even Georgia, Ole Miss. There's a lot of schools. Oregon just threw their hat in, maybe a little late. Could be a little late for Georgia as well. I think Lane Kiffin's got some work to do at Ole Miss. They've had a coaching staff changeover. May not keep Freddie Roach, who I know had a relationship with McKinley. But if Bo Davis is hired at Alabama, and I strongly believe there's a really good chance that could happen, he has a track record in the NFL and in Alabama developing defensive linemen. I'm sure that would be one of the first stops he made. And he's very familiar with the state of Mississippi. And I think probably if you had to ask me, it'd be Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU. LSU's had a great year on the field, Gary. They've got an outstanding class themselves. But I think what Alabama would like to do, they would like to get McKinley Jackson and pair him with Tim Smith. And if they do that, I think both those guys aren't rated 5 stars, but they should be. They could complement each other very well. So I think Alabama's definitely in the thick of the mix with McKinley Jackson. They just need to get their coaching staff, and start getting those dominoes put in place. And if they do, I think that they can make a very strong run for him. But right now, I would say it's more of a 3-team race with McKinley, with Alabama, Texas A&M, and LSU.
All right, Drew, great segment as always. And for the folks out there listening, of course, Talkin Ball, you've got a very active Twitter presence and social media presence. In the last 30 seconds, just kind of fill the listeners in on all the different places they can find you.
Yeah, they can find me at DrewD977ESPN for my personal Twitter account. You can also tweet at me at 977ESPN. And Scott Tyson and I bring everybody Talkin Ball here in the Rocket City in North Alabama, 7 to 9 a.m. every Monday through Friday. And we always enjoy being on the Gary Harris Show. And we'll be on Press Row Wednesday night for Alabama and Mississippi State. Big game for the Tide. They missed an opportunity in Gainesville against the Gators, but hopefully they can get that first SEC win of the Nate Oates era at home against the Mississippi State squad coming in that's trying to bounce back from a home loss to Auburn.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I really intended to get a little basketball discussion in with you, and we ran out of time, but we'll do that next week. Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Gary.